and I worked in the construction business, and I would be too hard on my left hand with it, so I will call it to order. And Susan, if you would do roll call and the introduction of our new members, please, I'd appreciate it. And if you all would sign in as we pass the paper.
Good evening, ISOC committee members. My name is Susan Millay. I am the Executive Director of Business Services and the liaison to the ISOC committee. Thank you all for being here this evening and for contributing to our community and our school district. Tonight, we're excited to introduce 5 new members. I think I'll go ahead and introduce our new committee members first. Ms. Bobby D'Alessandro.
Happy to be here.
And this evening, Mrs. D'Alessandro will be departing at 7:15 for a previous engagement. Mr. Joe Mitchell is with us also. Mr. Cole Peacock. Welcome. Mr. Matthew Rupsdorf. Welcome. And Jay Santos. Thank you, sir. All right. In addition, in attendance, Mr. Fred Atkins. Here. Mrs. Greta Campbell. Present. Mr. Fred Elliott. Here. Mr. Randy Kreis. Mr. Randy Kreis. Okay. Mr. Joe Mazurkowitz. Here. Mr. Harlan Parrish. Mr. Harlan Parrish. Mr. David Schellenbarger.
Here.
Ms. Shia Sherman. Here. Mr. Steve Shimp.
I'm here.
And Mr. Chris Simino.
Here.
And our school board liaison is Mrs. Kathleen Morgan.
Yeah, here.
Thank you.
All set, Susan?
Yes, we are.
Our next item on the agenda, and it's the first piece of business as we come into the new year, is the election of officers. And I would open the floor to nominations. I'll start by nominating Fred as vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I'll nominate Chris Simino for chair.
Okay?
Second that.
Okay, good.
Any other nominations?
Mr. Shimp, do you
I
want to,
nominated Fred for vice chair.
And I nominate Chris for chair.
would you like to continue to serve as
You catch it?
Mr.
Well,
Chair?
I will if you want. I will if you want me.
And I will nominate you to continue. You've done an outstanding job.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I agree.
Mr. Shimp, could I please get the people who proposed the actions, please? You guys are moving a little fast for me tonight.
I'm sorry, but I'm not understanding you.
Okay. I'd like to know who made the proposal for the recommendation for the position of chair?
You want to know who nominated who?
I nominated Chris. Chris nominated Steve.
Steve?
That's right. Joe nominated Chris. Chris nominated me.
I'll second the nomination.
And Steve
Over
nominated.
chair.
And I nominated Fred for vice chair
Okay.
because he's been a good vice chair to me.
Okay, so Mr. Shimp has been nominated as the chair. Did I get that right?
Yes,
I would second
that's
that.
correct.
Okay. And
Chris has also.
Yes.
And Chris, and so do we have any further nominations for chair?
A second for me for chair is what she's looking for.
You don't need a second. You don't need a second nomination.
Okay. All right. And so,
It appears that there are 2 of us for chair and there's 1 for vice chair. Fred, you're a shoo-in.
I'm happy to nominate anyone for secretary. Anyone?
Oh, it's not that easy, I'm sorry.
I'm aware of that.
I'd like to nominate you for secretary. You've done such a great job.
Thank you.
So, all those in favor of
if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Shimp, I have a script that I want to run through that we take the nominations so that I can accord them.
I'm having so much trouble with those speakers because they're pointed out.
What I'd like to do is follow the script that I have for the nominations so that I can make sure they're captured in accordance with the school board protocol. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
She says there's a process.
Protocol.
Yeah.
So we,
Follow your own protocol, Susan.
All right, so we have, a member has been nominated, and both members, Mr. Schimpf and Mr. Simoneau, have agreed that they would be willing to serve in the position of chair. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the way that we'll proceed next is that we will have a voice vote. Please remember to vote yes to the member you choose to elect, and no to a member who you choose not to elect. Once we have received a simple majority vote for a particular candidate, that person will be elected as chair. Ms. Campbell?
On a voice vote, how would you know how many voted for which candidate?
We'll go individually and count each person will say, Mr. Atkins, yes, Ms. Morgan, Ms. D'Alessandro, yes, and so that's how we'll do the count.
Okay.
Okay, so the voice vote will be each individual person speaking up.
Just raise our hand.
Yes, you could raise your hand. Actually, this says that we're supposed to say yes.
System, just question, we could vote yes for both, couldn't we?
You could.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
so if I could,
Make sure.
I'll go ahead and continue. You can vote one time, Mr. Mazurkowitz. All right, once we have received a simple majority vote for a particular candidate, that person will be elected as the chair and no further votes will be taken. If we go through all of the nominees and no candidate receives a majority of the votes, we'll begin the voting process again from the top until one candidate receives a majority of the votes. As there are 15, there are 14 members of the committee present, so votes for one candidate, votes for eight votes would be considered the selection of the candidate. So we called for nominations, and we have received so far, the first nomination that we received was by Mr. Mazurkowitz for Mr. Simoneau, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, then we asked for additional nominations, and Mr. Schimpf was nominated by Mr. Schellenbarger. Did I get that correct?
That's correct.
No.
No?
Chris?
Mr. Simoneau? Oh, okay. Okay,
I seconded it, that's all.
okay. All right, so do we have any further nominations for chair? Hearing none, we will begin the vote. This will be a voice vote. Those in favor say aye and raise your hand, and those opposed say no for the election of the first candidate that we will be voting for. So now we will ask each member their vote and record the votes and tally the results. Okay, so Mr. Atkins. Yes, Mr. Atkins for Mr.
What name? What?
For Mr. Simoneau.
Yes.
Okay.
That's not going to
This
work.
is not,
No, one vote only, I'm sorry.
Well, then it's not one vote only, it's not two separate motions.
The way you were setting it up, Joe asked, said, can we vote for both? And you said yes.
No, I was, Mr. Mazurkowitz is not going to be able to vote twice. So for the position of chair, we'll go through and ask each committee member if you, so.
Ken, if you want.
Come back to me.
Ms. D'Alessandro, the nomination is for Mr. Simoneau for chair.
may I withdraw and not accept?
Yes, you may.
That'll make it easy.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I withdraw.
Okay, Mr. Simoneau has withdrawn from being nominated as chair, so that leaves Mr. Schimpf. And so are there any other nominations for chair? All those who desire to vote for Mr. Schimpf, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Please keep your hands up so I can count them. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No one has two hands up, right? Okay, so we have 14 votes for Mr. Schimpf as chair, Congratulations, Mr. Schimpf. Once again, you are selected as the chair for the ISOC committee. Okay, next I will call for nominations for the vice chair.
Mr. Atkins,
Mr. Atkins was nominated by Mr. Schimpf. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Mrs. Campbell.
That the nomination be closed.
Second.
Said name.
Okay. Seeing no further nominations, all those in favor of selecting Mr. Atkins as vice chair, please say aye and raise your hand. And leave them up so I can count them. And I see 14. That was a quick count. Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Atkins. You are once again selected as the vice chair of our ISOC committee. Mr. Schimpf, I'd like to turn it over to you for the approval of prior meeting minutes, please.
that's fine. I guess you don't need to be elected?
I guess not.
Do we not need to elect the secretary?
I'm so sorry. You don't need it. No? Are you sure? Okay. Do I have a nomination for secretary?
I believe that I nominated you.
Okay. Mrs. Sherman has been nominated by Mr. Schimpf. Are there any other nominations for secretary?
Chris Semino, just to...
I would like to nominate Chris Semino. He's such a dear friend of mine.
Okay, so Ms. Sia has nominated Chris Semino. And Mrs. Campbell, I saw your hand raised.
Well, I raised my hand to be acknowledged by you to ask that the nomination be closed on the one said name.
I wasn't fast enough, I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay.
Why don't you withdraw? Chris.
Okay, so I guess I should then ask if Ms. Sherman is willing to accept the nomination, and then I'll ask the same of Mr. Semino.
Like, I could go ahead and withdraw if that would make you happy.
Do you have to take notes or is someone taking notes? I don't know.
I have
No,
to
you
take
take- she
notes.
takes notes.
But they give me like a format to fill in, so it's like,
I'm not good. I'm not good.
Honestly, I would not want to do that to the committee.
Then you can
I
withdraw.
withdraw.
All in favor? Back to you, Susan. You can...
Okay, back to me. So we have one nomination on the floor for Ms. Sia Sherman, and nominations are closed, and I'd like to take a vote by voice and by hand. Please raise your hand and vote and up aye if you're voting positive for Ms. Sherman. Okay. I see 14 votes again, so we have three. Our third, congratulations, Ms. Sherman, on the position of secretary.
Now I'll take it for the minutes.
Thank you.
The minutes were sent out in advance of the meeting, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 8th meeting.
Second.
There was a second. Mr. Atkins. Did you get the
who
second?
was the second?
Cole Peacock?
Chris was first.
Oh, Chris.
Vanessa, did you get them?
Yeah, let's see, I've got it, Jim.
And next, I'd open it up for any public comment. Is there any comment from the public? Yes, sir. I would remind you that we have 3 minutes in public comment, and then you'll be cut off if you continue. Thank you. And if you'd state your name, please.
Good evening, Chair. Lou Navarra, retired teacher, 38 years, 30-year Teachers Association member. I tried to contact you all, and today, because I had just a couple questions, but there's no way to contact you unless I do a public records request. You know, I don't know why the board doesn't give you a cell phone and an email address like everybody else. I mean, I don't want to know your personal, where you live or anything. And I was surprised that they're not treating this committee with much respect. So I'll make those recommendations to Dr. B. I've often wanted this committee to be a little more serious. We're talking millions here, and everybody's just kind of laughing off everything. This woman here, she knows Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm happy you guys are starting to follow that. Maybe Debbie Jordan gave you the book I gave her about Robert's Rules. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just trying to get some points across. You know, we're talking millions. I read an article, and it's millions, and this fellow that, he said, I don't like people looking at millions and just overseeing. It worries me. And you all seem to rubber stamp everything. You know, and I'd like to find a sheet where we know the chair again without finding emails. But how do we know? This was my question, and I had to come down tonight. There was no way to contact the chair. How do we know that the tax money is not being used for Hurricane Ian recovery? Because that is not what the referendum said. And I'd really wish you'd address that. I haven't been here in 6 months. I just don't really know how public ed's going to survive anyway with Tallahassee. But I wanted to ask, how do new members apply here? I didn't know there was some openings for people. The last time I applied was with Andy Brown, and he voted no because he said I was an employee, substitute teacher, give me a break. Anyway, we won't go that road. So I'd like to see more organization, and, you know, next time I'll bring some donuts and coffee. I do that to the veterans once a week almost, and but I think you should take this more seriously. And I'd like to see job descriptions. I mentioned that 6 months ago.
Thank you. And I appreciate you operating within the 3 minutes. Whoop. And we will turn that off.
You mean I got cheated out of 3 seconds?
No, you did. You had 3 more seconds to work. I would like you to stay for as long as through item 10, because there will be a Hurricane Ian update as to the expenditures in that period, so that is coming on the agenda.
Mr. Schimpf, I'd like to, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. When we use these microphones, please press the button, make sure the red dot is on, and pull it very close to you so that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast, and that way people will be able to hear everyone's comments.
I can't.
So make sure you press the button
Oh, okay.
when you're talking, so the red light shows because it's
Got it.
being broadcast.
Mrs. Morgan?
Susan, these are different than the ones on the dais.
Oh, okay,
Press the button in the back,
okay.
supposed to do?
They're hot all the time.
And Mrs. Lancaster indicates there's no button for you to press.
Yeah, they're hot now.
Get a little closer to it.
Yikes.
The next section on the agenda is that council will be going over the rules by which all the committees within the district operate in with regard to the Sunshine Law. And this is training mostly for our new members, but also a good refresher for our existing members. And you'll be seeing a number of slides, and please pay attention to it. This is serious business in terms of the open dialogue risks. So, council, would you please go ahead? That's I'll struggle with pronouncing the Shana Zupke.
Yes, good evening, everybody, and good evening, members of the committee. If you just give me a moment while I get the slides pulled up for you.
Oh, escape. There we go.
Okay.
Pull that real close to you because it was kind of low volume.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Shana Zepke. I am one of the assistant school board attorneys with the Office of Legal Services. So I'm going to give some information for the ISOC committee. Some of it is going to be regarding public records, sunshine rules, and then just some general information about our policies and roles for the committee. Again, these committees are for community involvement. So as is often said, we are wanting the community's input, and this gives the organized fashion that we are able to continue to give the input for the community and also have it for in the sun, as we call for the sunshine. Board Policy 1.19 is regarding the community engagement. Our policies support in the 4 principles that I have listed up there, specifically under the policy 1.19. That includes inclusiveness, focusing on the efforts to increase learning, building consensus around those efforts, and two-way communication. And as probably everybody on this committee is aware, our board policy 1.26 is what gives the guidance on the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee, also known as ISOC. This gives the guidelines and membership procedures and responsibilities. The mission of the committee shall be to monitor the district's use of the half-cent sales tax revenue to be collected in Lee County from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st of 2028. And this is in accordance with the project list and to provide periodic reports to the school board. The committee will provide oversight of the district's use and expenditures of the proceeds of the sales surtax to certify consistency with projects and the purposes set forth in the resolution that was adopted by the board. The meetings, the committee will at a minimum hold meetings on a quarterly basis each calendar year. This year was a little different because we did have some disruptions due to Hurricane Ian. So as you are aware, we've had several meetings that have had to either be rescheduled or changed for the order of what type of business is done. The committee may be, by a majority vote, decide to hold additional meetings. All the meetings must be open to the public at all times, and all minutes of the meeting shall be promptly recorded. As you are aware, we have assigned a secretary for tonight who is recording those minutes. And these are also open to the public for inspection. All meetings shall be videoed and audio recorded. The agenda for every committee meeting shall include an opportunity for public comment, which we have already had for tonight. And the committee may, by vote, limit the time allowed for comment and the subject of the comment to matters on the meeting agenda. The committee will also decide whether the public comment will be at the beginning or the end of the meeting. This committee, it does include board involvement. We have our board liaison, as you are aware, it's Ms. Morgan, who is here tonight, and they also will be assisting with some periodic reports to the board. And here's kind of the meat and potatoes of the presentation tonight, of getting into sunshine law. Sunshine law really is regarding making sure that everything is out in the open, or what we like to call in the sun. Meetings of the 2 or more school board members include discussions between 2 or more board members upon any issue that would be foreseeably appearing before the board must be at a public meeting. So this means if there's something that could potentially be taken action on, needs to be done in the sun. A discussion between the members about matters that could foreseeably come before action using telephones, email, Facebook, blogs, or other type of social media and electronic means could also potentially violate sunshine law. ISOC, all the meetings for ISOC of any or an advisory group must be open to the public at all times, also properly noticed, and all minutes from such meetings shall be promptly recorded and open to the public, as I had previously stated. And we must all the records from the meetings must be maintained as well. No meetings through the use of intermediaries. So this can happen. This is kind of one of those rules that gets violated kind of a little bit more unknowingly. So that's why we do want to touch on it a little bit. So this is from a person who is not a committee member acts as a liaison between the members for communication. So what ends up happening is a de facto discussion that's conducted on matters that ends up going before a board. So this is important to be careful about discussions with people who are not part of that committee, and having it kind of also known as a daisy chain, where those discussions end up happening where one person goes to one member, talks about something, and then goes to another member, and then now consensus is accidentally or purposefully taken.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yes.
I just want to confirm that so long as, so for example, if someone were to talk to Mr. Schimpf and have a discussion about a topic and then talk to me, so long as he doesn't tell, or he or she doesn't tell me what Mr. Schimpf's position is, that is okay. But to act as a Mr. Schimpf said this, that's not okay.
Even sometimes, so yes and no. So sometimes that's where I say the accidentally is where it comes back, where you have a person who said, oh, well, I spoke to this person and they said this, and then I spoke to this person and then I said this. Now, you're not communicating the information but between the board members, but there is potential consensus. So if there is business that's going to be brought before the board and there's question about whether or not there's something that could potentially be a violation, that's where you want to make sure you bring it to the committee here, but also you can contact either through Anissa or your school board member here to determine if there's something that needs to be brought up before and in the sun and by action. Okay. So it's just something to take that extra precaution about.
I've had this question on other boards, but what's the penalty for the sunshine law if you violate it?
I will be getting to that in just a moment. So we'll get, yep. So then another area that often can cause issues is with subcommittees and breakout sessions. So we always advise that you use caution when you are breaking into smaller groups. We have some case law that really gives a little more definition to why and how this could potentially break the sunshine law, and some of that goes with the notice and being able to get public comment and public participation. So up here you see a couple of the cases that do discuss that. One of the more recent cases of Florida citizens, and this is also because, well, Florida citizens, and then we have the court case in Linares that really goes into the breakout sessions, allowing openness and access to the public. And this is where there is just two separate committees that in a breakout group discussing the middle school and high school, and the members of the public weren't able to give comment and hear the discussion of both of those breakout groups and being able to provide public comment. So that is, again, just an example of why I believe this, I believe that when we break out, we're breaking out, and those subcommittees are also given a chance for public comment, and those are recorded as well. So again, we just want to make sure we're exercising caution to be able to give the members of the public the opportunity to participate through public comment and be able to hear all the discussion on the matters. With committee meetings, some of the sunshine law violations that can occur really do come as the penalty that that you were talking about. Is there can be up to a $500 fine and I believe up to 60 days imprisonment. So that is something that could potentially have criminal ramifications if these laws are broken. Again, if there's questions about making sure that the meetings are staying in the sunshine and records are being able to be provided for not just sunshine but for public records, that is something you can always, again, ask questions about, contacting through the secretary and the chair, who's the liaison to the group. The committee meetings are again videoed and audio recorded. That is again for public records, so you are able to have access, so the public is able to have access to the information that is discussed. The public comment, as again we had tonight, is allowing the community participation in the meetings, and we always encourage professional decorum. As you are aware, the Roberts Rules of Order are typically how the meetings are supposed to be run. And when I say typically, is that there is, with this committee, is that there are some, with the exception of the requirements of a quorum. So that is something that is different from other meetings, that the other committees that the school board has, is where there are quorum requirements. Another aspect for this part of the sunshine is public records. Public records defined is all the materials made or received by an agency in connection with official business are used to perpetuate, communicate, and formalize knowledge. So that is, again, documents from the committee are basically, they are open to the public by request, unless there is a public records exception that it falls under. I know that there are often requests for records on who the committee members are, including information that could be released to the public, including like addresses and phone numbers. So that is something that if you do qualify for an exception, there are certain professions and certain acts that do allow the members of the board to be able to apply for one of those exceptions, so their information wouldn't not be released. If that's something that may apply to you, please contact again Anissa, sorry, secretary, for getting that information so you can fill out those forms. And but all, again, agendas, meeting minutes, notices, those are all part of public records that people are able to request. Again, if there's presentations, the information from those presentations, that's another example of what potentially is going to be going out to the public. The biggest part of this as well for the committee to be aware of is the electronic communication and conducting official business. Remember, email messages and text messages made and received by members in connection with official business are public records. So when there's questions asked, if there's requests for information to be presented, that could also become a public record. And this is something that we do retain per state retention rules. And the parliamentary procedure is another aspect that we will be covering tonight to continue with the decorum that I spoke about earlier. Principles of the parliamentary procedure. All members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. The majority vote decides. These are some things to keep in mind. The rights of the minority, meaning people who may not vote with the majority, must be protected. Complete and free discussion of every proposition presented for decision is an established right of all the members. And we will go through some examples of how to make sure some of those discussions can occur and how to bring proper motions. Every member has the right to know the meaning of a question or the motion before the assembly, the board, and what the effect will be. So when a motion is made, there's the ability to ask for discussion to be able to clarify what the motion is going to be asked and what you're voting on. And also the meetings must be characterized through fairness and in good faith for all the members. The chair's responsibilities, one is making sure that the meeting is running smooth, and for being able to give good cause, Posing questions, restating the motion. So these are some things that might have to be had to keep that decorum. So if a question needs to be restated for not just the secretary who's taking the minutes, but if there's questions on what the actual verbiage of the motion is, the chair is able to restate that. Also helping with the wording of the motions. So if there is an action that wants to be taken, the chair can assist with making sure that it's clearly stated. The chair can also rule on the motion if the meeting is not in order or there's questions regarding the motion at hand. Also bringing forth the motion for debate and discussion, and again this is what I was discussing or stating about making sure that every member of the committee understands the motion being brought forward. And then also processing the vote, making sure that they understand who's voted for what and having a clear consensus of what that vote is. And then lastly, being able to announce the results of that vote. This is the procedure for the main motion. Nothing goes to discussion without a motion being on the floor. So we're going to go through how do you make a motion and how does the chair bring that forward. So right now, if there is a motion on, I'm going to use examples. If the committee can give some participation, please give an example of like what a motion that's being brought to the floor.
Make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Not yet, but too early. So now we have a motion on the floor. What is the next step?
Second.
Okay. So yes. So the procedure for handling the main motion is brought before the board. So at this point, the member makes the motion. I move to, and we just had an example of that, to adjourn the meeting, again, a little early yet. And then this is where, again, the motion as a secretary, where you are recording it as a secretary as precisely stated. The secretary is not coming up with their own words. So again, that is if the wording needs to be better defined, that's where they can be requested for that motion to be stated again. There also needs to be a second. So the next step would be I second the motion, or second. You don't have to agree to the motion to offer the second. So just because you second a motion does not mean you're necessarily going to be voting in that direction, but that allows for the discussion to move forward. The chair then states the motion and then says it is moved or seconded that, and then repeats the motion that a motion to adjourn the meeting. Are you ready for question, discussion, or debate? So depending on what is on the floor would be that next statement. Now this is where the consideration of the motion comes forward. All members of the committee are able to debate and discuss the motion. Before speaking in the debate, members obtain the floor. That's also where if there's too much talk going on and it's hard to hear the discussions or members are speaking over each other, that's where the chair can step in to take order over the discussion. The maker of the motion will have the first right to the floor. So that is the person who would be starting with the discussion. So the debate also must be confined to the merits of the motion. So again, some examples of that. There was a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting. That is where we would have Madam Secretary state again why she is requesting to adjourn the meeting early. And now this would allow the next person to start in to give comment on, well, it's too early to adjourn the meeting, or to state, well, there's ice cream out in the lobby, so we need to adjourn early to go get that ice cream. Bringing things to the attention of the floor that other members may not be aware of. Again, unfortunately, we have no ice cream and we still have some business to go forward on. Courtesies during debate. Listen and be respectful of everybody who is on the member and offering up useful information. Be respectful of time for all the members. Stick to the subject and what is germane to the issue. Again, staying on point to what the merits are of the motion and what the business is that you are discussing. Avoid bringing in personalities. Address the chair versus individual board members. This allows, again, for the chair to keep that decorum and keep order through the committee. Also, just be formal with the discussion and continuing to move the information in the business ahead. Now, the next part is, how do I end the discussion? Well, this is limiting debate. So if you think that discussion is getting long, you want to be able to give reasonable time to consider the questions. So now that the motion has been recognized, Madam Chair, I move to limit discussion to 2 minutes per speaker. So what this allows is that, I said Madam Chair, but I believe now we have Mr. Chair. We will have once that is on the floor, you would have that limits in place, so to allow each person to have those 2 minutes. Again, this would end the debate, and then you would be able to move forward, that would end the debate and then would require 5 votes to keep it a majority vote. And actually, because we have more members than 5, I apologize, I believe it was 8 for tonight. The chair puts the motion, the chair would then put the motion to a vote. The chair would ask, are you ready for the question? The chair takes the vote if no one rises to claim the floor. So meaning that is, you are then stopping that debate. You're asking if we're ready to move forward, and if no one brings up additional debate or discussion, then you can move forward. The chair will then question, the question is on the adoption of the motion. So that is now bringing forward again the motion that had already been brought and seconded. At that time, there will be the vote, and if this time the motion carries, indicating you're going to ask for the members to make that consensus. This I saw earlier, there was the raising of the hand and the voice vote, or determining how you will be making those votes, so everybody's voice and vote are counted. So if it's a hand vote, making sure you state the number of hand votes. If it's a voice vote, making sure you state how many votes for the ayes and how many votes for the noes or the nays. Then at this time, you would indicate the effect of the vote. So the ayes carry it, or the nays or noes carry. And then you would state if the motion fails or if the motion passes. Amending a motion. If you want to change some of the wording in the motion, what do you do? Is there any members that have suggestions on how that would be brought forward?
I'll make a motion to amend the motion to adjourn and postpone it for 30 minutes.
I like that. So that second. So then that is correct. So again, after recognition, Mr. Chair, I move that the motion be amended by adding the following words. And then again, after recognition, there would, or you could also have the striking. So if there's amending to add or change, or if you are wanting to change it by deleting portions of that motion. Again, after recognition, Mr. Chair, I move that the motion be amended by striking out the following words with the information that you are striking out or adding, and adding into the place the following words. Again, going forward with the example that we've been using, Mr. Chair, I move that the motion be amended by striking out the words adjourn and adding in their place the following words, adjourning in 30 minutes. Again, we've kind of been talking about some of the rules that are for parliamentary procedure and some of the public notices. Again, if there's issues with rules not being followed, the meeting is not following the proper rules or not following parliamentary procedure, or even if you need a break, if there's long discussion that has been occurring and or the mics aren't working, and like again, it's too hot or cold in the room, something needs to happen to be able to make the meeting go smoother, or a change to the agenda. What do you do if there's a reason why you need to get the meeting back on track? Right? Bring it to a point of order. The meeting is not following proper rules. This is where you may call out a point of order or a rise to a point of order. This allows you to respectfully ask for the chair to gain control back over the meeting. The chair will ask to state the point of order. Sometimes it's clear already without having to ask that, but it is, again, remember, these are being recorded, audio recorded, so that is going to be an important point to restate what that point of order is. The chair will rule that the point of order is well taken or not well taken, and determine the next steps of how to get the meeting back on track. At the end of the meeting, or sometimes during, there's also the good of the order. This is allowing members to offer comments and observations about the discussion of the agenda. They may discuss that at this time, this is also where you can discuss offenses committed by other members or disciplinary charges. But again, this is really to be able to offer your comments as committee members regarding the meeting. Again, I'd like to thank every one of you here tonight for your service and the dedication that you've brought to the district. Are there any further questions? I know I already answered a few.
Any questions?
Again, thank you for having me tonight, and have a good evening, and I'll be watching the rest of the meeting.
Next agenda item is my comments. I would just share with you that looking on the election results, I would share with you why I'm willing to continue as chair and wanted to do that. Last year, during the course of the past year, we started an effort to prepare a presentation that would be modified quarterly to report to the public the activities of this committee and reach out to various organizations in the community. Hurricane Ian just cut that right out of the schedule and disrupted that, and I feel strongly enough about us getting out in the community and doing it that I want to continue and see that to fruition. So that's I don't look for a long-term position here, but I did want to see that what I consider an important piece of business to be completed. So thank you for bearing with me for another year, and I will be looking for volunteers who will step out into the community and be speakers in that regard. So the next agenda item is a report or comments from our board member. Kathleen?
So it's my board member update. Actually, what I've done is I've asked Ms. Kelly Lecter, who is our Director of Budget. There have been questions in the community about whether or not we are using the sales tax for Irma renovations, new schools, et cetera. And so I suggested that she might just want to talk a little bit about how we compartmentalize capital funds, sales tax funds, renovation, remediation funds, how we move funds between various accounts. So,
hello everyone, how are you doing today? So what we do is we have a separate fund that we set up for each one of them. So the hurricane fund is Fund 125, so anything that is paid for from that funding source comes from that Fund 125. The sales tax has a fund of 395 or 394, I don't know off the top of my head which one it is, but everything that is paid from sales tax is in that fund. That's how when we give you reports, we just pull the information from that fund, and that's how we know exactly what was paid from each of those funds. If an item may be split funded, like we may be paying something from some capital dollars and from the sales tax, when we pull the funds, it will be funded from the sales tax under one fund, the portion is that, and then whatever the other funding source would be there. So you would see the portion that was funded from sales tax when we do our presentation to you all. So we do not everything, that's how we assure that everything that's paid from the sales tax is what is on that resolution. We do not, my office does not set it up if it was not on that resolution, and no one else has the ability to set that up, only us. I hope that clarifies everything. Any questions?
I have a quick question, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun, because I know we've got a Hurricane Ian update. A little more granular, to kind of go to your point about the questions, what's the decision-making process on line items on deciding what should be paid from which fund? And otherwise, how do you categorize the expenditure? What's the decision-making process for categorizing the expenditure as either a sales tax funded effort or the other silo that you said?
So first of all, we look at all of the things that have to be done in the district, and we go through each of those. We look to see what's on the resolution. So we know that can be funded from sales tax, and then look and see what we can split around. The first thing we do is look and see, is it on that resolution? If it is, sales tax is a possibility. If it's not on there, then it has to go to another funding source. And then we start going down the line and looking to see what the priorities are and where we need to be funding from. Does that answer that question for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks.
But I also think the question, Kelly, is and I have heard people say, for example, we're going to rebuild Hector Caffaretta on a different site, so it's a new school, and we're still talking about what we're going to do about Fort Myers Beach. Now, how are we funding those new schools? Is any of that sales tax money, and how do you keep that separate?
So those would not be sales tax. Neither of those items were on the referendum. So as of right now, there would be no proposal to do those from the sales tax. As far as split funding them, like Hector would be split funded. It would be reimbursed partially from the funds from FEMA for the hurricane, and that would be for the portion of Hector that was destroyed during the hurricane. And then if the proposal to make it a K-8 happens, of course, the middle school portion would not be eligible through Hurricane Ian funds because it was never there before, so it wasn't destroyed, and that would have to be funded from another funding source.
Because we talk to people in the community, this question comes up. It's not exactly in the subject, but I've gotten a feeling that because of Ian, a lot of property tax abatement is occurring, and that obviously is pretty important to the district. Is there do you have a forecast, anything, a general statement you would make for public consumption that we could share with our constituents when they ask us, well, how much difference is the abatement going to make overall to the school district?
So just so we're clear, this has nothing to do with sales tax, so just want to make it clear because it's not, the abatement has nothing to do with the sales tax. This would be our local tax dollars, but just want to make that clear. But yes, we're looking, I'm estimating, and it is, I have no idea. Nobody could tell me how much damage, because as you know, the abatement had to do with an uninhabitable home within a certain period of time. I think it had to be for over 30 days, and then they're looking at things. So I met with the property appraiser's office, and they gave me an estimate overall of the value. They separated the land value from the home value, or the improved value, which would be that, because the land value would not be able to be abated at all because the land value wouldn't have changed. It would be the improved value. The county was estimating about a 25% loss. I went at about a 20% loss without really knowing, and for the general fund, I was looking at about $50 million that it may be that we would be reimbursing taxpayers for abatement from our portion of the millage, from just the general fund. That doesn't, not the capital portion.
I'll continue to be vague.
Any other questions? Thank you. Kathleen, is that the end of your portion?
That's it. Yep.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Communications Department update, and I'd like to, as Irma Lancaster will be presenting that, but I'd like to preface this for our new members. Irma is in charge of maintaining the website that people can visit and read our minutes and get the updates and generally the communications to the public from our committee that operates on the website. So Irma, if you would take over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome, new committee members. So we're so glad you're here and giving of your time to help us with this effort. So we do have an entire communications team that's made up of professionals that manage website, public records, media relations, switchboard operations, video production, just such as Adam, who you met right before the meeting, et cetera. So we have a lot of, not a lot of talent, small team, a lot of talent. So I want to show you a little bit about where you can find information. As some of you mentioned, when you're out in the community, you want to be able to answer questions. And one of the best places you can find information is on our website. So we have an entire section on the district website dedicated to Change for Change. The easiest way to find it is from the home page. You go to our district, and when you do the drop-down menu, there's a Change for Change. When you click that, it takes you to this very page right here. So we created this, I think about 1.5 years ago. We wanted to have an easier way for the public to find information. And we'll usually have the latest updated video, and after the last one we did in June, unfortunately we haven't produced any new content because after that all of our video content kind of went to post-Ian recovery. So we're now kind of getting back on schedule to our usual project. So this is the latest video you'll find. But we also have some tiles here that we organized for the public to find information very easily accessible. We have the sales tax report, which we are going to work on to release a second version. Let me see if I can get that to open. That is an annual report that we put out 2 years ago, and we're hoping to, I guess more like a biannual or every other year. But it's basically like an annual report that has information. So this is the latest one, and that's what you'll find in the very first tile. The second tile will give you information on the expenses and projects that are district-wide. So here you can see all the revenue and all the planned projects and how much money is going where, which is very important. And I can tell you from our website analytics, most of the visitors spend time looking at those projects. They spend an average of about 5 to 8 minutes reviewing that, and so that tells us that people are actually looking on a regular basis to see where those tax dollars are going. I'm sure Mr. Navarro is one of those people. We also have a sales tax dashboard for individual schools. Many members of the public are mostly interested in what exactly is happening at my school site, maybe not necessarily district-wide. So you can go there and click whatever school you're interested in, and then it'll tell you exactly how many dollars have gone there and what the projects that that school has undergone. So that's very easily accessible information for you and any members of the public. One thing we continue to do in our department is engage the media. We want to make sure that we're constantly telling stories about where those tax dollars are going, and we put together a page that's dedicated solely to any stories that have to do with sales tax revenue and expenditures. So the last time we updated was in February, so we'll probably get the March update anytime soon. Any stories that have to do with the sales tax, new school construction, renovations, etc., you will find those here. And as you can see, this actually goes back all the way to when it started. You'll find 2022 here, and then on the left you'll see 2019 to 2021. Every single media story having to do with the sales tax since we first started receiving revenue. So very transparent, extremely transparent. We also have a video playlist that takes you to our YouTube channel. And when you click that, it'll take you to our playlist of any videos that have to do with the sales tax. And these are the ones that are produced by us internally. And you could peruse that at your leisure. Capital versus operational funds, which I know Ms. Letcher was just explaining a little bit about some of those expenses. The public can also go here to access that information. It's not coming up, but that is where you can find it. Financial audits, and here's where you come in, the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee. This isn't the only place where you can access this information, but it is a great place for you to find it, given that everything having to do with Change for Change is here. And by clicking that link, it'll take you to any and all things having to do with ISOC, from what it is, what the role is, upcoming meetings, agenda items, minutes, presentations, all that great stuff that Ms. Shana shared earlier is all available here. In addition to our website, I share this because this is really the place where you'll find a lot of content, the majority of the content on a regular basis. But we do have a neat campaign that we're bringing back now that we're kind of starting our regular coverage, which is called our Sales Tax Tuesday on our social media channels, where we highlight something neat, just a fun fact about what the sales tax has paid for. As Mr. Schimpf mentioned, we also have been working on this presentation that hopefully will be shared with the rest of you soon as we launch the ISOC committee presentation tour in the fall. We're very much looking forward to that. But in addition to that, our team has already been actively out in the community. We actually received a call from South Rotary just the other day and that they needed a speaker on a certain topic. So we went and shared information about the district yesterday morning, and in addition to that presentation, we incorporated information about the sales tax. So any opportunity we get, we are out there. But we have done pretty much all of the Rotaries. We haven't done them in about over a year, except South Rotary, which called us the other day. So I think they would be anxious to hear another update whenever these lovely committee members get to go out on tour. And another thing we do, obviously, yes, I see the smiles. Everybody's anxious. Yay. We also hold events. So, well, let me go back to media. So whenever we host a big media event, let's say we are we're starting a new project. Let's say we have Riverdale coming up. We want to invite the media to come out. We will also invite members of the ISOC committee to come out and speak to the media if they so wish, or if they don't want to talk to the media but they want to walk around with us while we're giving a tour, we will advise you and we'll welcome you to join us. But as we're talking about events, we'll hold groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, etc. whenever we have something new. ISOC committee members are also invited to those and acknowledged if they are in attendance. So you will all be receiving an invitation when we finally have a date for the newly named Mel Teal Middle School, which I believe is going to be more of a dedication since it is a renovation. So you all be invited to that, as well as the Amanda said ribbon cutting. Both will probably be held sometime this summer, so we look forward to inviting you to those events. And those are all the talking points I have for now. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Just wanted to give you a little brief overview of what we do and how we support Change for Change communications. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you come up with something later, you're more than welcome to reach out to Ms. Millay.
Any questions from any of the committee members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would urge, particularly our new members, but every member, to visit the website, spend some time there. It is well done, and there's an extensive amount of information there. It'll help you field questions from the community also. It gives a very clear picture. The next item on the agenda is the review of our projects. And prior to that, I'd like to point something out that occurred to me in the context of the prior comments. It's important to note, and it's very important for each of us to understand, that there are specific projects that are fully funded with sales tax dollars, but there are numerous projects that are funded with capital funds that otherwise are in the district and then are completed with sales tax dollars. So it's not an easy thing to make a list saying those are all the projects that were done that would not have been done otherwise, or those are projects that are paid for exclusively with sales tax dollars. We are a combination, and that's an important thing that I don't think a lot of the public has a good grasp of. So when you're speaking with them, please make that clear. The second thing is that it's important to note with regard to the sales tax dollars that the referendum is limiting as to what the money can be used for. So when you have a question from someone in the public, it's important to remind them, wait a minute, it falls into major construction, major renovations, capital maintenance projects, not the maintenance department, regular maintenance, technology, safety, and there's one other, and it's not coming to my mind right now. But it is limiting, and that's the reason that we're here, to make sure that the dollars are spent within those limitations. So Sorry about taking the floor, but I think it's important those 2 points be clearly understood and communicated.
Sir.
And good evening.
Good evening. Frederick Ross, Executive Director of Operations. I oversee construction, maintenance, and planning for the district. Right now, we'll talk about our construction projects ran by our construction department, led by our director, Scott Rickenbacker. His team does a great job. You know, he talks about giving the ball and then running with it. That's kind of his job as the project manager to get these projects done. So we're doing a better job of giving him the ball, and he's definitely running with it. This first page is our procurement phase. We'll break this down into 3 different phases: procurement, design, and construction phase. In the procurement phase is when the scoping is going on internally, determining what the specifications for that project is, and then working with our procurement department for the competitive solicitation if needed. The projects we currently have in there, you'll see, are all roofing and HVAC projects in that scoping and procurement stage. Those roofing projects are all roofing projects that were scheduled and ongoing prior to Hurricane Ian. They're not Ian-related roofing projects. And those HVAC projects are generally chilled water piping and air handler upgrades, as well as upgrades to the building automation systems in the building, all to seal the envelope in terms of the roof and make that building run more efficiently in terms of the HVAC systems. Next slide. Next slide would be our design projects. These are currently in design stage, typically with our architect designing the actual specific details and the design for the actual contractor to do the work. Projects to emphasize on this page: Bonita Springs Elementary School, doing work there on that historic building structure, repairs to the foundation, site improvements, adding some cafeteria, restrooms, and renovation to the loading dock. Also on there is Cape Coral Technical College. This project is currently delayed due to the fact that the Hector Cafaretta Elementary School portable campus is using that site behind Cape Coral Tech, and that's where that future expansion would be going. So, you know, they're being hospitable and being good guests, and that project is still going on the design phase, but will be delayed for that actual construction until that temporary campus is removed. And then also you have Gulf Middle School HVAC, and then phased out construction for Riverdale High School. Phase 2A is the current stage they're in now. That incorporates the new gymnasium, the science wing, and looking at alleviating some of the parking and traffic concerns there in the area with some renovations to that parent drop-off and parking lot. And then the phase 2 will be renovation to the interior of that campus. Next slide. And then lastly, our projects in our construction phase. You see several plumbing projects. That's piping replacement, sewer pipe line replacement types projects, some more roof drains and HVAC projects. These are projects currently in the construction phase. So those would be our ongoing projects that are sales tax related, again, in those 3 phases: procurement phase, design phase, and the construction phase. Any questions on those projects? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you tell me the status of Franklin Park and what is going on there? There is nothing done on the outside, so I don't know what's being done internally.
Yes, I can. So the students and faculty have been transferred over to the portable campus, and currently demolition is scheduled for the actual campus. We did have a prior event agreement with Fort Myers Police and Fire, where they used it for some training. That has been completed. The construction and project team are full scale on that schedule. I don't know the exact date of demolition, but it's scheduled for demolition shortly, and that project is on schedule.
Your area, but so students were displaced in December, and to date, nothing seems to have been done other than the training project.
Yes, and I know how it may from the outside look like nothing's being done, but yes, there was, after the students and faculty were displayed or moved to the transition to the portable campus, a lot of work had to be done, moving out of furniture, moving out of maintenance team did a great job of salvaging things and parts and materials and equipment that we could use from that building, and then also project team is still moving forward with the, there's actually design that has to be done even for the demolition and raising of buildings. So that project has been moving on. I know you can't see it from the outside, but it is ongoing. Any other questions?
Other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Mr. Dwayne Alton from the Chief Technology Officer to present our Safety, Security, and Technology Projects update.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background for the new members of the committee, and you'll notice that we've kind of lumped in several categories into one. So when we talk about safety and security, the reason that I'm presenting some of these projects is because those are the technology related things like surveillance cameras, the access control systems, swipe cards that to get into the buildings, alarm systems, and also communication systems within the schools. So those we kind of lump together in our technology update. You may see other safety and security updates in these meetings come from maintenance or construction if they're working on additional projects related to safety. So the other piece of background to give you with the technology projects is that we have two that are just instructional technology projects that are not related to safety and security. So if we start with the safety and security upgrades, we obviously had a little bit of a challenge for one quarter. Didn't get a whole lot done in what Q2 of our fiscal year, which was from October to December. We were all hands on deck working on recovery of our sites. We did start back in, I would say, mid-December, back on progress, and we are accelerating to try to keep as many of the projects on schedule as we can. So 31 of the security projects were completed from the time between mid-December when we had the last meeting and the end of this quarter. And so those security projects, for those of you who are new to the committee, you'll notice that we don't give you a list of schools, what the status is on the schools, because we try to protect operational security. We don't release that information to the public. It's exempt from public record. So we do give you kind of summaries, and so the types of projects I talked about are the types that were completed in the schools, and we are back on schedule with the security projects for this year. Now when we get to the technology projects, we have two categories. The first one is the interactive technology packages that we use in the schools. And we had 7 schools where we completed the interactive technology package, and that includes the large Promethean panels, the interactive touchscreen panels in the classrooms, the audio systems in the classrooms, as well as some of the document cameras and ancillary items that go with that. That project, we are almost back on schedule, but I think that we're going to push the completion. The projects that were scheduled for completion in June are pushing out to late August, but we will be pretty close to our original schedule. We've accelerated as much as we could on that project. The other project that you'll see is the computer refresh program, and that is that we use sales tax money to refresh our equipment in the schools, and that includes your teacher and student computers. And that, when you see the reports, one of the important things to look at, to note, is that it looks like nothing happens with that all fiscal year until the end. And the reason is we actually place those orders and we arrange for the configuration and delivery of equipment. In this case, fairly early because of supply chain issues. We've been ordering as early as November for a June delivery. So you won't see those expensed out until either the next meeting or the one after that, depending on when all of the invoices get processed. So even though it looks like nothing happens for quite some time, the work is going on. It just isn't reflected in our expenditures until that equipment is delivered and we pay the vendor for that equipment. So, and the computer refresh touches all schools. So we refresh our technology We have different life cycles depending on what the technology is. And so we cycle through all of the schools and refresh the equipment, depending on what type of equipment it is, from a 3 to 5 year cycle, depending on the item. So, any questions?
Any questions?
All right, thank
I'd like
you.
to add a supplement on the security side. About 3 meetings ago, you may recall that we had some discussion about concern from this committee that the district really could not reveal in public meeting format a lot of the detail of the security things that are being put in place in the schools, and a motion was put forth and passed that basically asked the chair to meet periodically with the security people, be briefed on those projects, and then come back to you as a committee and say, yeah, I've been briefed on the projects and I believe that they're in conformance to the constraints of what was passed. I had a recent meeting with Michael Ramirez and Dave Newland, who's the head of security, about a system, and I am at liberty to tell you an overview of it. The district is in the process of purchasing and installing a weapons detection system that will be used in all of our schools and will be able to detect weapons as students come in and out. It's had a couple trial runs in a couple of our schools. The feedback from both faculty and students has been very positive in terms of doing it. It is in use in other districts in Florida and as well as across the nation. So that's a pretty significant expense, north of $3 million. It will be installed in every school and is also portable to major events. So, and that's happening with sales tax money. So I'm at liberty to share that with you. And thank you. Any questions about that? I'm not sure I can give you any more detail than what I've already given you, but.
All right. Back again for maintenance department projects.
I was going to say, you don't look like Barbara.
No. I'm representing Barbara and her maintenance team. Again, another busy department, managing hurricane-related repairs and continuing day-to-day, and as well as their capital projects, typically smaller in nature compared to the construction projects, but all still key to our facilities. They've shown theirs kind of by trade. They manage more single trade projects, where those construction projects we talked about earlier are multiple trade projects usually ran by a general contractor. I'll talk about a couple of these maybe high bars, like window and door upgrades. Bonita Springs Middle and Gulf Middle Schools are two examples of that, where they're being upgraded with hurricane impact doors and windows, and these doors and windows help keep the heat out, so make the building more energy efficient. Flooring, several schools where the life cycle of the flooring, or the flooring had just reached its life cycle and was due for replacements. Those schools include Hancock Elementary, Merida Middle, Cypress Lake High, Varsity Lakes Middle, Mariner High School, Fort Myers Middle, and Spring Creek Elementary. Different combination of LVT, tile, or carpet squares, depending on the traffic area. And again, those floorings had reached their life cycle. And then lastly, generators. Generators are key, especially for outages, storm events, and if that particular school is a hurricane shelter, very key in several schools where the generator had also reached its end of life cycle. G. River Hips, Sunshine Elementary School, and Mirror Lakes Elementary School are campuses where those generators are being replaced, and those schools, the generator at those schools supports their walk-in coolers, their lighting, fire alarm systems, security systems, and again for storms, outages, and hurricane shelters. So that's just a few projects out of those that are highlighted there that our maintenance departments are continuing to manage. Any questions on the maintenance department and their projects?
Any questions from the committee? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Michael Ramirez. Michael, have you been before the committee before?
I have not, sir.
Introduce yourself and your position, please.
Absolutely. So good evening, Chair, Board Member Morgan, and committee. Michael Ramirez, I have the distinct honor of serving as the Chief of Staff for the district. And as some refer to me as a chief of staff, because I do quite a number of different things throughout. So, and one of those roles, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you to share and just provide an update on Hurricane Ian and our recovery, our response and recovery efforts here in the district for the devastating damage that I know our community has experienced, and many at this table in this room have experienced as well. And the purpose of me sharing today, and in my role as chief of staff, one of the key roles that I played in the district is really to be the driver in our response and recovery of those efforts collectively across. So I've had the opportunity to really work with the team to manage a lot of the response initially in those early days, and then moving forward the long-term recovery efforts. So just here this evening, just to share just some highlights around just Hurricane Ian, the update and the damages themselves. And I'll start with the last bullet, because I know part of this update, while not a normal part of the updates in the quarterly meetings, the question specific to sales tax revenue and any correlation to recovery efforts. So sales tax revenue has not been utilized. I know it was Ms. Lecter Kelly shared earlier around the recovery efforts. It has not been utilized for the recovery efforts. So I just want to just share that, but really wanted to provide an update on where and what we have experienced in the district. Collectively across, we've exceeded damages of over $300 million in damages across all of our schools. As many of you know, 2 of our school buildings were catastrophically damaged, that being Hector A. Cafferata Elementary, as well as Fort Myers Beach Elementary, and we are in that process to find what the long-term recovery efforts are at both of those schools. However, every campus across our district suffered losses, whether it was of all sides, whether it was additional roof damage, ceiling tiles, debris. Collectively across really experienced suffered loss. The interruption of revenue, the tax dollars, property tax delays and abatement, as was shared earlier on that, has been a challenge that we are working through as well. Insurance, we've worked through payments and commitments to date, over $100 million of insurance dollars, specifically over $75 million in property and $25 million in flood insurance as a part of our recovery efforts, and really revenues coming in specifically for those purposes. And that's as you know, as homeowners, and that is a slow process. Actually, while commitments may come, the dollars sometimes lag in that process, but just working through that as well. And speaking of that piece, the FEMA process and working with the government around just the payments and commitments around that. Those commitments and that work comes in the name of projects. We have over 200 projects that have been identified that we are going through that process as well. We most recently, and you may have seen a release around our first project was awarded 50% of that project of over 200 projects where we were awarded $10 million, received a letter of award of $10 million, have not received the revenue just yet, but we have received that award letter. So and as we start to expect buildings and that process that we're working through, we anticipate, we're excited to, hopefully that will be the beginning of, as we see the award letters coming out around commitments that are being made through that. But just wanted to provide that brief overview. And again, as I shared at the beginning, I know there were questions that came forward, and on behalf of Dr. Bernier, who said, want to really come and just share. He's at a Top Chef event at East Lee County High School. Eating, he's a judge, so so he's there. So I came on behalf of him to really just share just some of those updates. And again, the question around sales tax revenue and how our recovery efforts have really been focused on what we've done, but that sales tax revenues have not been utilized by any of those recovery efforts. So that's the Hurricane Ian update. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Joe?
FEMA dollars. Long time between commitments and actually seeing cash. Are you going to front the cost once you get a commitment, or are you going to wait for the dollars? So I'm going to defer. I'm going to look to Susan Millay, who's to my right, your left, who's been our FEMA expert around just the fronting of dollars and how that process has worked. Susan?
The district is working on both temporary and permanent repairs. Our temporary repairs are completed. We are fronting those dollars. We are not waiting for FEMA to bring the funds to us. So We are moving forward, making repairs, and are working intensely with FEMA to, the one project that Mr. Ramirez referenced, we were successful in having it processed as an expedited project. So that project funding is expected, I would propose likely within 2 weeks, and so that is a very expedited project in the FEMA process.
How much have you collected from FEMA to date?
For this disaster,
Yes.
we are awaiting our first payment. We've had our first project awarded, and we have yet to realize any revenue.
That $10 million was the first award.
Is my memory correct, Susan, that we just received the last Irma payment within the last 6 months?
Unfortunately, we still have 13 projects outstanding with Hurricane Irma.
So it's for the committee
And it's been
purposes,
5.5 years.
This is a long, drawn-out process.
And we recovered, what, 60%, 65% of our cost for Irma? That's it?
Yes, Irma's a great comparison. So Irma cost, our losses for Irma were about $30 million. We recovered about $10 million through insurance and about $10 million from FEMA, and the district absorbed about $10 million. Hurricane Ian is on the scale of $300 million. We are working diligently in the damage capture phase on Hurricane Ian to make sure that FEMA will be able to step forward based on the evidence that the district provides for the damages and repairs so that we can recover a higher percentage than was recovered as a result of Hurricane Irma.
And I would say that between Jeff Wagner, who was brought in as an acting COO immediately after the hurricane, and our experience with Irma, the district process for documenting every single step of the way and every item along the path has been pretty incredible. And even though our collection may take some time, Mr. Wagner is pretty confident that the process being used and the national professionals we've used to do
remediation and stabilization.
He is pretty optimistic that we will be able to recover considerably more on a percentage basis than we did with Irma.
My experience for any government agency is if you get to 75% from FEMA and lucky to cover 10% from the state and other sources, you're gonna eat the rest. And that's if everything goes extremely well. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and that's still 5 or 6 years down the road before you get to those percentages. So it's a lot of cash out of pocket up front.
If I may, through the chair, just one last piece. I think as we look at the long-term recovery in our school buildings, this month of April is a key month around securing through the procurement process our roofing contracts and projects, which really in some of our schools, and you may have students or family members or know people, students sitting in school buildings that may still not have carpet, and there may be some pieces, and the roof, as many know, securing that building envelope, specifically the roof. So in those cases, so we have 14 schools with significant damage around that, and the roof, and getting the roof repaired. So that this month, you'll start to see, we anticipate awarding in the process, and then moving forward. And on our website, in addition to the incredible job that our communications department has done with the sales tax, there's a little hurricane icon, and you can click on that icon and see all of the projects and actually the dates of when we anticipate where we are in those projects, school by school, long term, to have an idea. So I just wanted to share that as information, because the more that information gets out to our community around what we're doing and how to ensure that our community is informed, and that you're informed as you reach out and speak with community as well.
How often is that updated?
That is updated weekly. So the actual, and you'll see it's color coded. So if there's a delay, it'll turn red, and when it's green, so it's color coded, and weekly we get an update, and we continue to do that. So.
Thank you. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
So If you're lucky and recover 2/3 of the $300 million in damages, that's $200 million, you're short of $100 million. Is there a commitment from the school district not to use sales tax money going forward for the $100 million?
Yeah. I would defer to Kelly. I don't want to speak out of turn around that, so I would defer to Kelly Lecter.
It can't.
Well, you wouldn't be allowed to, right?
Can't.
So it's not on the referendum, it wasn't part of the referendum, so we could not do that without coming back and having the discussions to, I mean, there is a caveat to amend, but we would need to go through that process to do that, if we were going to.
You've defined what a bad roof was before the hurricane, and now that it's or if it's a bad roof today that needs replacement, but it was damaged by the hurricane, you can't use sales tax revenues to fix the roof.
If the roof was already determined, and I just had this conversation with Mr. Ross, so that's why I'm feeling pretty confident he can correct me if I'm wrong, but if the roof was determined to be, need to be replaced prior to the hurricane, and we had it on the thing to do it, and then it was damaged further during the hurricane, we cannot use hurricane dollars to make those corrections. It has to be from what we previously were going to fund it from. Did I say that right? All right. So, okay.
Michael, thank you very much, and again, welcome to the district. Thank you. I might add that, you know, there's an impact to the capital side from the hurricane, but there's also a loss of operating dollars too from the from the property tax differential. So this is going to be a tough time. We're probably going to see a reordering of capital projects that will postpone things into the future, because capital dollars that were in the district will have to move, not sales tax dollars, but other capital dollars will have to move to hurricane projects. And that's going to be the reality we're faced with, very likely. A review of the financials, Matt?
All right, good evening, everybody. Matt Acosta, Business Services Coordinator. I'm going to walk you through the finances for this quarter. So the first slide we have here is the estimated capital revenue for FY23. This is all the revenue we're looking at for capital, so not just sales tax. You'll see sales tax is estimated at $108 million through this year, which is 31% of the capital revenue. And this does not include fund balances. So this is all new revenue that we've estimated. But next slide. Right here, we're looking at just sales tax. So the sales tax budget is $205 million for this year. Of that, the majority is from maintenance, 45%. And then here's how we break it down: maintenance, technology, construction, safety, and then 7% that is in reserve. The construction does include debt service for new schools. This next slide here is the monthly sales tax collections. This is year over year. We're looking at 22 and 23. You'll see that we've are kind of matching pretty close to where we were in 22, with the exception of September and December, which were where we record the quarterly discretionary distributions, which are a little higher than what we had last year. It seems to be matching close to what we had in FY22. Good. Here you can see total revenue to date. So we've projected $344 million of sales tax revenue to date, and we've received $385 million, which is about 12% above what we've budgeted. For FY23, we budgeted $57 million to date, and we've received $64 million. So we're also looking at about 12% that we received over what we've projected and budgeted. And then for our revenue tracking, you can see how that breaks down month to month. So again, we have 64 million that we received. So that is 60% of what we've projected and budgeted through January. So as of January, we've met 60% of our budget. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Having heard the reports, I would entertain a motion with regard to approval of the projects that were presented.
Move for approval. Second.
There's a motion from Harlan and a second to approve the projects as presented.
The second, who seconded that? Mr. Peacock?
Cole, I heard it from my right, and that was as far as it went. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
I'll call the motion. All in favor, say aye. Excuse me, Chris, go ahead.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Not just one. I like to do them in threes. On the financials, Franklin Park is not budgeted for any expenditures in this current fiscal year. So are we not using sales tax money for anything going on at Franklin Park according to the spreadsheets?
Isn't this the investment, the phase 1 and phase 2?
Did you hear the question? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The answer is on its way, Chris.
So as of right now, remember some of the construction projects will show up as debt and not necessarily construction projects. Franklin Park has not yet been in that area. What we're doing, I think right now, is funding it from somewhere else and then going to be moving when we get our COPS for it, and then we'll be moving the funding around based on the debt that we use at that time.
May I? The budget this year was $190 million, and looks like through 8 months we've spent $35 million. Mr. Alton suggested that some of that is technology that won't arrive till the end of the fiscal year. Are you concerned at all about the pace of expenditure if we've only spent a small fraction through 8 months?
So a lot of it has to do with the timing of when we receive invoices and things in. So the work may be completed, but there's a delay in when we get the invoice in and we make the actual payments. And what you see is when the actual payments are made, not when the work's been completed. So things have been underway, they've been completed, and the hurricane, quite frankly, has slowed us down a little bit on what we had been proposing to have done for, you can imagine, for a couple of months and probably more than a couple of months, everybody's kind of shifted away from what we were doing into hurricane mode for a while. Now we're trying to get back into the regular mode of trying to get stuff done as well.
And finally, I'm trying to crosswalk what was in the presentation to what was in the spreadsheets.
Okay.
Is there, there's expenditures around plumbing. Does that go into maintenance or?
Yes.
Construction? Because
It would
there's
be
no
in
category.
plumbing. If it's its own category, it would be a maintenance project that we would be working on in plumbing. Construction ones would be tied to a school or major construction projects that would be millions of dollars, and plumbing would be individual plumbing things within schools.
Where would that fall under the budgeted maintenance?
I'm sorry?
It would be under budgeted maintenance improvements?
Correct.
Under what category?
Maintenance.
Under maintenance. What category?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're looking at those. Okay, building improvements. Sorry. Looking on here to see.
All right.
Chris, I may be able to help you a bit with that. The maintenance department is overseeing capital projects that may be plumbing replacement, system replacement projects that are a long-term capital expense, not a routine maintenance expense. And we're constantly fighting that in the wording. The maintenance department is overseeing a capital project.
So it's in the maintenance
within
budget, not in the construction budget.
Correct.
That's correct. And when I even struggle when I look at the slide where we have our fiscal year 23 sales tax budget, the word capital should be in front of maintenance there because those are capital maintenance projects, not maintenance.
So that would match up with the other slide where it says maintenance service capital project.
Yes, and we can do that. We can add that in the future.
It would match up with that slide.
Idea.
You may need to do that, please. Thank you.
That would, I would agree with doing that. That would probably help you in the external conversation as well and not have to explain that.
Okay, thank you. Anytime
other
we can
questions?
improve, we're willing to do so.
On your projections, I'm impressed that we're 12% ahead on collections year-to-date. That's through January. February, March are often some of our biggest sales revenue collections. Any indication on where we are in February and March? Is it still trending ahead, or is it too early to tell?
We've gotten any of that in?
No, there tends to be a delay in when we get those received. So there's 2 months delay between when it's actually the sales tax happens and then it's collected and then it's actually received by the district. So we often don't see that, we may not see that until April, May. So we just kind of run off a delay with that. So
Plenty of cars on the road, so it must be doing well. But the hotel rooms are offline, so I just...
So just remember, sales tax, we only receive up to, I think it's $5,000 from like a car sale or something, so.
Gas,
Yeah,
we get the
yeah,
gas.
we're getting gas, yeah, there's definitely that.
There is a motion on the floor to approve the capital projects as presented. Is there any more discussion or questions with regard to that motion? If not, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I also request that we have a motion regarding the budget presentation and the income report from Matt.
I'll move the financials as presented.
Second.
Second?
Who seconded?
Who second? Dave. And is there any discussion with regard to that? I would call the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Both passed. The ISOC committee presentations to the community. The presentation materials have been updated from last fall. I don't know if they've been emailed to the full committee yet or not, but they're basically the PowerPoint slides. And the important piece of business that I would offer to you all, we would look to have some of you volunteer to make those presentations. A staff member would go with you when you make a presentation. You could choose, for starters, a service club that you know people in so that it's friendly country, and I would encourage you to do that. But I think it's important that we as individual members of the committee get out and we have enough knowledge as to what's going on that we can address the community and start to roll out what's been going on here for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a good story to tell. The slides are well done. The presentation is about, it's less than 20 minutes, more like 15, depending on how quickly you put it forward. And if you are interested in doing that, please get your name to Susan and say, I'd be willing. We will train you. We'll work with you on presentations, techniques, whichever. But if any of you in the committee have an interest in doing that or would be, even if you're not interested, if you're willing to dive on the sword, great. So thank you very much. Those slides and that presentation will be highlighted to the board within the next month or so, and that'll get us to the position where we want to go forward to the committee, or to the community. Thank you. Any member comments?
Steve, maybe we could do something on social media or through communications that invites the public or groups that would want to hear to submit something.
At this point, Chris, what we did, we had a subcommittee of this committee. There were about 5 of us, and as we met, we identified, and I probably won't get all these right, the Panhellenic Council, the Horizon Council, and I believe Rotary South and Downtown Rotary, and help me, those from the committee, were there others? I think we identified those 4 to start with, and we were going to see how that rollout went, and then start to expand that and reach out a little further. We kind of looked at those as testing ground, and we'd like to give a good enough presentation that it's totally informative, and we believe that the questions coming out of those original presentations will help us do a better job in communicating to the community. So we may be premature reaching out to say, hey, if you got a group we can talk to, because they may be disappointed that we don't get to them soon enough. That's clearly good business in the future, but right now I'd like to postpone that one.
You're the chair.
Would it be possible that when we do kind of like those test presentations with those 4 organizations, that members of the committee be informed of when those were going to be?
You bet.
So that we can see.
Sure, we could do that.
How you guys are doing it?
You bet. Yeah, and if I'm making the presentation, I'm sure I'm going to, if any of you attend and I'm making the presentation, I can promise you that the first question asked, I will refer to you to answer.
So everyone come in disguise. Got it.
Okay. Other questions about that? Hopefully this will be good to get out in the community and get the word out a bit. I think it's important. All those being said, any other member comments and questions?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to request that Mr. Ross gives us a timeline update of Franklin Park from demolition to construction to include estimated timelines, please.
That's for our next meeting?
For our next meeting, yes, sir.
Can you say off the top of your head when that school is supposed to open, that new school will be completed? Does anybody in the room know?
Well, they haven't demolished the old one yet.
Yeah, but they have a planning, I'm sure they have a planning.
I want to say that it's...
They have a project plan. They know what it is.
Scott's not here.
Somebody
He's
knows.
the one who would know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
I said I can include that in the update.
Okay.
Speak on that day, so I can include
Great.
the date in the update.
You know, if you could update that, and Susan communicates to the committee, if you could update that to an email to her, or however you do it inter-district, and then send that out, Susan, to our full committee, that'd be worth doing. So then we'd get it sooner than our next meeting. Please. Any other questions?
I have not a question, but a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Not necessarily related to what we're here today about, but I experienced my son going through the shutdown at Dunbar High School today. Everyone who is working in the district, I would like to thank you for the way it was responded to parents, to the public. I know it is a terrible thing that y'all have to react to. It was handled extremely well. I know you have so many other challenges on top of protecting our kids, but thank you for what you're doing. The message came out very clear to parents. There was no real secondary questions, I don't think, that had to be asked, so thank you for that.
Hear, hear.
Thanks, Colin. Any other comments? I would remind you all the future dates of June 22nd at 6 o'clock, September 21st, and December 7th for your calendars. You want me to read them again slowly? Mm-hmm. They are June 22nd, September 21st, and December the 7th. That being said, I entertain a motion.
Second.
Who moved?
Semino moved to adjourn. Ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Catch that?